Hey everyone, and welcome. So glad you're here today because we are diving into a truly incredible piece of prose from your textbook. It's called The Concert by Shanta Rameshwar Rao. Now, I want to be clear right up front. This isn't just some made-up story. It's a powerful, true account of music, of unyielding hope, and a sister's incredibly daring mission for her brother. I absolutely promise you, by the end of this explainer, you aren't just going to understand the text, you're going to really feel it. Let's get started.
Okay, picture this for a second. Imagine your absolute favorite musician in the entire world is playing a concert just a few miles away from you. But you can't go. You're completely bedridden and severely ill. Well, this is exactly the heartbreaking situation our young protagonist Anant finds himself in when his 16-year-old sister Smita reads an exciting announcement in the morning newspaper. Let's look at exactly how this story unfolds.
To really master this text together, we're going to break this incredible story down like a 5-act movie. Act 1 is the chance of a lifetime. Act 2 covers a family's secret sorrow. Act 3 is Smita's daring plan. Act 4, meeting the musical wizards. Act 5 brings us to a miracle at home. And finally, we'll wrap up with Section 6, checking your understanding. All right, let's jump right into Act 1, the chance of a lifetime. It all starts on what seems like a regular morning, but it changes everything. Smita excitedly reads the paper out loud. Pandit Ravi Shankar is playing tomorrow at the Shanmukhananda Auditorium. Now, the boy on the bed, Anant, he isn't asleep. Despite being incredibly sick, he manages to raise himself up on his elbows and his eyes are just shining. He gasps out, "It's the chance of a lifetime." He's always wanted to hear and see him play.
I want you to look closely at the word Anant uses here, maestro. As your textbook defines it, a maestro is a great performer, especially a musician. Pandit Ravi Shankar isn't just some guy who happens to play the sitar. He is an absolute world-class master of the art. So this isn't just a regular concert. For a boy who loves music as much as Anant does, it's a monumental, life-defining event. Which brings us to Act 2, a family's secret sorrow. To truly understand why missing this concert is so agonizing for him, we have to look at the family's hidden pain. Let's pause and ask ourselves, why was Anant's family staying in this cramped apartment in Bombay in the first place? Obviously, they weren't there for fun vacation. The text tells us they came with, quote, high hopes. But what exactly were those hopes? While they hoped the miracles of modern science would cure his cancer at the hospital, they dreamed he'd be able to walk, run, play table tennis, and, you guessed it, even become a great sitarist himself. But instead, his condition just kept getting worse. The doctors eventually gave them a completely devastating verdict. Take him home, indulge him, and just give him whatever he likes. They knew he literally didn't have many days left to live. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding the mother's reaction. When Anant forces himself up to talk about the concert, his mother instantly springs to his side. The text says she murmured with a catch in her throat. I mean, what a brilliant phrase. It perfectly describes that tight, awful feeling you get when you are desperately trying not to cry. It shows us her immense, completely hidden sorrow over her son's fading life. Now let's move into Act 3, Smita's daring plan. Smita sees her brother's impossible wish, and she simply decides she can't just sit there and do nothing. As she's hurrying home later, she tells herself, why not? There's no harm in trying it. She makes a choice right then and there. She is going to go to that concert, and she will somehow find a way to ask the legendary maestro to play for Anant. Your textbook highlights a really fantastic word here, unbidden. Earlier in the story, the mother's prayers came unbidden to her lips, meaning they happened automatically, completely without being forced. In that exact same way, this daring plan arrives in Smita's mind almost unbidden. It grows totally naturally out of pure love and desperate empathy for her dying brother. All right, Act 4, meeting the musical wizards. So Smita steps out of her sorrowful apartment and walks into this incredibly grand world. Sitting in the gallery at the auditorium, she feels as if the very gates of enchantment and wonder are opening up for her. She's completely spellbound by the ragas, but pay attention to her focus here. All the while, she hears Anant's voice in every single beat of the tabla. Her physical body is at the concert, sure, but her mind? It's entirely back home with her brother. Finally, the concert comes to an end.
The audience give the artists a massive standing ovation. You know, that enthusiastic, roaring applause where everyone gets to their feet. The curtain comes down, people start shuffling toward the exits. For Smita, the music is over. But her real mission, it's just beginning. Now is her time to act. Notice how the author really maps out her courage here step by step. She doesn't just casually stroll backstage like she belongs there. This 16-year-old girl wriggled her way through the dense, intimidating crowds. Her heart is hammering in her chest. She even bypasses a large, mustachioed man who tries to stop her. She pushes through pure terror just to stand directly before the great wizards of music, Ustad Alaraka and Panditji. And right there, she pours out her brother's whole story. Let's see what happens in Act 5, A Miracle at Home.
So the big question, does this terrifying risk actually pay off? Well, at first, the mustachioed man scolds her, basically saying Panditji is way too busy. But Pundit Ravi Shankar smiles, motions for the man to be quiet, and turns to Ustad Sahib. The Ustad simply says, "Tomorrow morning we perform for the boy." Yes? And Panditji calmly replies, "Yes." It's settled. Just like that, they agree.
The next morning, the absolute impossible actually becomes possible. Pandit Ravi Shankar and Ustad Alaraka literally show up at Aunt Sushila's apartment block. They sit down right next to Anant's bed, and they begin to play. As they play, life is slowly leaving Anant, but his final moments are completely filled with absolute, pure joy. His ultimate dream was realized.
Okay, let's head into our final stretch, Section 6, Checking Your Understanding.
What a profoundly powerful story, right? Let's step back to the whiteboard for a second to synthesize exactly what we've learned. The textbook asks you what was echoing in Smita's mind, and this comparison is so key. Externally, she was spellbound by the music, but internally, her mind constantly echoed with Anant's desperate words, the chance of a lifetime. Her love completely overrode the sheer enchantment of the music. Think about the text and these characters for a moment. Was it a normal, everyday incident for world-famous Grammy-winning musicians to perform in a tiny, cramped apartment? Absolutely not. But it perfectly highlights the profound humanity. They didn't see themselves as untouchable megastars. They just saw a dying boy with a final wish. Their empathy is what drove them to say yes.
One of the absolute best ways to understand a story is to look closely at the actions. Breaking down the text like this shows us exactly how the author reveals a character's true self. Anant, physically raising himself up, shows us his intense passion without the author ever having to write, Anant was passionate. And Smita's dry tongue? It shows us her sheer terror, which makes her bravery in speaking up anyway even more magnificent. Finally, your textbook prompts a really beautiful, thought-provoking question. How would you end it? Now, some of you might wish Anant lived longer after the wizards played. That's totally natural. But ask yourself, what does this tragically beautiful reality actually teach us? Does it show that art, true empathy, and completely selfless love have the power to conquer even the darkest moments of human suffering? I want you to really think about that. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. I'll see you next time.
Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I am so incredibly pumped to be with you today because we are diving into Unit 5, The Concert by Shanta Rameshwar Rao. Now listen, this isn't just your standard textbook chapter. We're talking about an unbelievably moving, real-life story of love, pure courage, and the literal life-changing power of music. And here's the absolute best part. We're going to use this exact story as a launchpad to build up your grammar, totally upgrade your vocabulary, and sharpen those real-world communication skills. By the time we wrap this up, you won't just know the story, you'll have complete ground-up mastery over the language mechanics running behind it. All right, let's dive right in.
Okay, so here's our game plan for today. First, a story breakdown of the concert. Second, vocabulary, actions and motion. Third, speaking skills, specifically accepting invitations. Fourth, writing perfect invitations. Fifth, a grammar check on finite and non-finite verbs. And finally, number 6, a quick check on your understanding.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, The Concert, Story Breakdown, Smita's Daring Quest.
So our story centers around a 16-year-old girl named Smita. Her brother, Anant, is tragically dying of cancer. But Anant is this brilliant boy who absolutely lives and breathes music. So when Smita reads a newspaper announcement about an upcoming concert, a seemingly impossible dream sparks in her mind. She actually manages to attend a performance at the Shanmukhananda Auditorium. I mean, just imagine sitting there, completely spellbound, as the legendary Pandit Ravi Shankar plays the sitar, accompanied by Ustad Allah Rakha on the tabla. The audience gives them this thundering welcome, and the air is just filled with these enchanting ragas and lightning-fast notes. It's pure magic.
But see, while the rest of the audience was just soaking in the music, Smita was on a mission. Her mind was racing a mile a minute. She kept hearing her sick brother's voice echoing in every single beat of the tabla. Anant had called this concert the chance of a lifetime. And you know what? That exact thought became the absolute fuel, motivating her to do something unbelievably brave. She decided right then and there that she was going to ask these world-famous musicians to come to her tiny apartment and play for Anant. Crazy, right?
If we map out our read and respond flowchart from the textbook, we see a really brilliant, clear progression of events. It starts so simply. Smita reads the newspaper. Then she attends the concert. Next, she pushes past all her fear and makes that daring request. And finally, the climax of the story. The maestros actually agree. They pack up and perform right at Anant's bedside. It's quite literally a miracle born entirely out of taking action. Which brings us perfectly to Section 2, Vocabulary, Actions in Motion, sorting the action verbs. Okay, so Smita had to take massive physical and emotional action to get to those musicians backstage. Think of vocabulary like your personal toolkit to describe that kind of action. The more precise your tools are, the better you can express the story. Look at how we can categorize our action verbs from Task 1 into this really neat matrix. When Smita wanted to see the stage, maybe she had to peep or gaze. That's our observing category. To actually get backstage, she had to rush, dash, or even shove her way through the crowd. That's moving. And when she finally stood before the maestro, well, she didn't just chat, she had to plead, beg, and implore. That is the incredible power of requesting verbs. Grouping words like this, it's a fantastic hack to lock them permanently into your memory. And to truly cement these new words, you can use your dictionary skills to solve vocabulary mazes and crosswords just like the ones you've got in your textbook. By hunting for clues across and down, you piece together musical terms directly from the chapter. Like, identifying the Beatles as top rock stars, or realizing that a song sung by two people is called a duet. It basically turns learning vocabulary into a massive puzzle-solving mission, which is way more fun. Moving right along to Section 3, Speaking. Accepting invitations, real-world dialogue. Now Smita had to verbally invite these legendary musicians to her home, and miraculously, they accepted. Let's look at how we accept invitations in the real world. Imagine you're a student named Zakir, right? And your friend Vasu just won 3 first-place medals in a huge sports competition. Vasu runs up to you and says, "Hey, I have some good news to tell you. I won 3 medals, all first places." And then he drops the invitation. Let's celebrate. Your job is to respond appropriately. You wouldn't just stare at him silently, right? You'd use energetic language like, "That's fantastic, I'd love to." Mastering these small, everyday dialogues is absolutely crucial for sounding fluent and natural.
And that flows right into Section 4, Writing, Drafting Perfect Invitations, the core components.
So, if we know how to accept an invitation out loud, we definitely need to know how to construct one on paper. Smita's request was spoken, but what if you need to host a formal event? Let's tackle our practice writing section. Whether you're drafting a gorgeous invitation card for a majestic music concert or writing up a wedding invitation, like the one in your textbook for Sukruta and Shashwat, you absolutely must include these key structural pieces. You gotta have the who is hosting, the what, is it a concert, a wedding, the when, the exact date and time, and the where, the venue. Without these core components, your invitation just completely falls apart. Keep this mental checklist handy every single time you write one.
Let's shift gears to Section 5, Grammar, Finite versus Non-Finite. The mechanics of language.
All right, we've read the amazing story, spoken the dialogue, and written the invitations. Now let's pop open the hood and look at the actual engine of English. I want you to think of a sentence like a car. The finite verb, that is your main engine. It's doing all the heavy lifting, and it actually changes depending on who is driving, the subject, or when you are driving, the tense. If you're driving in the past, present, or future, that finite verb changes its shape. On the flip side, non-finite verbs are like attachments. Think of them like a bumper sticker or a roof rack. They stay completely frozen. They literally do not change no matter what tense the sentence is in. A really common example of a non-finite verb is an infinitive, which usually looks like the word to plus a verb, like to speak.
Let's look at this exact sentence from your textbook exercises to prove this point. We sent a surveyor to survey your land. Ask yourself, what is the main engine running here? It's sent. Sent is our finite verb because it tells us this happened in the past tense. But look at the phrase to survey. That right there is our frozen attachment. It's a non-finite infinitive. If we wanted to change the sentence to the future tense, we'd say, we will send a surveyor to survey your land. Notice how to survey didn't change at all? It stays frozen. And that, my friends, is the absolute beauty of identifying finite and non-finite verbs.
Finally, Section 6. Check your understanding. Let's review. Wow, we've covered a massive amount of ground today. We've explored a deeply emotional narrative, categorized our action vocabulary, practiced sending and accepting invitations, and mastered the engines driving our grammar. Now let's put it all to the test. Looking back at that intense backstage drama at the end of the concert, it's crucial to understand who exactly was driving the action. When Smita wriggled through the crowd, she faced a huge obstacle, the large mustachioed man who tried to discourage her. He told her not to bother the busy artists. But who took the brave action? Smita did. She made the request anyway. And who ultimately drove the final, beautiful resolution? Pandit Ravi Shankar, the maestro himself, who gave his consent.
And that brings us to our final, lingering question from the chapter. Did they actually perform in the boys' house? Yes, they absolutely did. Was this unusual? Unbelievably so. These were world-famous musicians who normally play in grand auditoriums for thousands of people. Yet, they packed up their precious instruments and played in a tiny, cramped apartment for one sick boy. I want to leave you with this thought. Mastering English grammar and vocabulary helps us communicate, sure. But as Pandit Ravi Shankar and Ustad Allah Raka showed us, empathy and kindness, those are the greatest languages of all. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep practicing your verbs and keep seeking out those chances of a lifetime.
All right, welcome to this Masterclass Explainer. Today, we're literally pulling back the curtain on exactly how SSLC evaluators grade Unit 5, the concert. Now, if you're a 10th standard student gearing up for those highly competitive Karnataka board exams, you already know the story, right? Smita, Anant, Pandit Ravi Shankar, you know the plot. But here's the thing. Knowing the story and actually scoring full marks on paper, those are two very, very different things. So today, I'm putting on my veteran evaluator hat, and I'm going to show you precisely what we're looking for when we are sitting there, red pen in hand, grading your answer scripts.
So here's our exam blueprint for today. We'll start by getting inside the evaluator's mind. Then we'll tackle securing quick wins with 1-mark questions, hacking the 2-mark value points, cracking 3-mark extracts, and finally avoiding those common mark traps.
Okay, let's jump straight into Section 1, getting inside the evaluator's mind and understanding the scoring strategy. Listen, to crack this exam, you absolutely have to shift your mindset. You've got to stop writing these long, messy stories, just kind of hoping we find the right answer somewhere buried in that paragraph. Honestly, we just don't have the time for that. Evaluators are scanning your paper for specific keywords. That's it. Every single mark you earn requires specific value points to be written down. Think about the math. For a 1-mark objective, we need one exact phrase. For a 2-mark short answer, we are hunting for 4 specific half-mark points. And for a 3-mark extract, we need 3 distinct 1-mark sub-answers. Learn this math, and you will crack the exam. Moving right along to Section 2, scoring those 1-mark direct questions and securing your quick wins.
Let's attack the quick wins first. Now, these 1-mark objective questions are usually pulled directly from your textbook activities. In the intense heat of the exam room, you cannot get confused about who did what. You must instantly know, without a doubt, that Pandit Ravi Shankar made the request, while the mustachioed man suggested the time of the concert. If that pops up as a multiple-choice question, you shouldn't even hesitate. Mustachioed man. Boom. 1 mark. Moving on.
And whatever you do, please don't fall into vocabulary traps. You know that textbook crossword puzzle? Yeah, that is an absolute goldmine for board examiners. Practice those exact clues. For instance, you need to know the famous pop group is the Beatles, and an orchestra conductor is a maestro. And listen to me on this. Evaluators are ruthless when it comes to spelling here. Literally, 1 missing letter will cost you an easy mark. So practice writing them out.
All right, let's get into Section 3. This is where the magic happens, hacking the formula for the 2-mark value points. Now, here is an absolute board paper favorite. We see this previous year question all the time. Why do you consider Anant a talented boy? Average students routinely lose marks here. Why? Because they write these fluffy, vague paragraphs about him just being good at stuff or athletic. Let me tell you, to an evaluator, that is a 0 mark, or maybe, if we're feeling generous, a half mark answer.
Just think about the difference here. It really doesn't matter if you wrote 5 lines of beautiful, perfect English. Generalizing and saying Anant was good at sports and music misses the official grading key entirely. We are scanning your paper strictly for 4 specific, undeniable facts.
So let me give you a really quick memory aid for this. Think TRSC. Table tennis, runner, sitar, composer. Memorize that simple list. 1, he was the best table tennis player. 2, he was the fastest runner. 3, he was learning to play the sitar. And 4, he had already composed his own tunes. If you give us those 4 exact facts, you leave the evaluator absolutely no choice but to give you a perfect score. And never, ever forget the sheer power of the half mark. According to the official 2018 and 2022 marking schemes, each of those 4 keywords is worth exactly half a mark. So dropping just one of those 4 facts drops your score instantly to a 1.5 out of 2. And that's true no matter how beautifully written or how long your paragraph is. Do not leave half marks on the table.
Okay, here's another highly tested previous year question. Do you think the response of the artist was unusual? Why? Students fall into a massive mark trap right here by just writing yes because they came to his house. Now, while that's technically true, it is incredibly incomplete when you compare it against the official board key. Let's actually look at the official 2022 board key answer. To secure those full 2 marks, the official key demands 4 distinct parts. 1, you must explicitly state that yes, their response was unusual. 2, you must mention they were world-famous musicians. 3, you've got to highlight that they had incredibly busy schedules. And 4, you note that despite all that, they still agreed to play for Anant. That's half a mark for each point. You need to treat it like a mental checklist before you even put your pen to the paper.
Okay, moving right along to Section 4, cracking the 3-mark extracts and mastering reference to context.
Now, extracts require rapid identification. You can't waste exam time thinking here. If you see the quote, "It's the chance of a lifetime," you need to trigger your 3-part value response immediately. The board is always going to ask, who said it, what was the chance, and why did he say it?
The official grading key here is basically just a 3-step checklist. Step 1, identify the speaker as Anant. Boom, that's 1 mark. Step 2, identify the chance. Going to Pandit Ravi Shankar's concert. There's your 2nd mark. Step 3, state the reason. Because he was sick and bedridden. That is your 3rd mark. You hit those 3 data points and you're done. Absolutely no extra fluff is required.
Finally, let's get into Section 5. This is crucial, avoiding common mark traps so you don't lose silly points.
Before we wrap this explainer up, we absolutely need to call out where average students just bleed points. And the biggest trap by far, character descriptions. Let me be clear, examiners absolutely hate generalized praise. Please, do not tell us a character is a good person or very nice. We literally cannot give you marks for that. We need textbook-specific actions and phrases to award marks based on the board's scheme. Take Aunt Sushila as the absolute perfect example. If a question asks what admirable qualities you find in her, do not just write, "She was nice to Anant's family." Nope. Instead, pull directly from the official evaluation key. Write down this exact phrasing. Her apartment was not big, but there was always room for them. Call her supportive. Call her kind-hearted. Those are the precise half-mark triggers the evaluator is holding a red pen to find, so give them exactly what they're looking for. By shifting your mindset, by memorizing value point breakdowns like TRSC, and by cutting out all that vague language, you're no longer just writing an exam, you are executing a strategy. You are leaving the evaluator absolutely no choice but to give you a perfect score. So the next time you sit down to write a literature answer for the concert, I want you to ask yourself, are you just writing a story, or are you handing the examiner the exact key they are looking for?